Hello, welcome to our reopening orientation for ushers and greeters. I want to first say thank you for volunteering for this. Things have changed because of COVID. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anybody, but the role of the usher and greeter has had to change because of some of the things due to COVID. The sanitation, separation, things like that are things we're going to talk about as part of the role of being an usher and greeter during this time. We are entering in phase 2 of the gradual reopening and return to what's going to be the new normal. For right now, what that means is that we are going to remain separated. We're going to remain in masks while we're in service, and there's some restrictions we'll talk about as we come up to that. But let's take this training in a way of how people come into church. The first thing that's going to happen as somebody comes up to the door, the main doors of the church, is that a greeter will ask them to verify that they are not experiencing any of the common symptoms of COVID-19 and that they have not been in contact with anyone who is confirmed with COVID-19 symptoms in the past 14 days. We're going to have that up on a sign so people will simply be able to answer those questions. We don't have to ask every single individual. They'll just be able to say no, no. And we will also be then taking their temperature using a touchless thermometer. You'll be shown how to use that later so that you can help with that. We'll have a list of people so that you can simply check off who is here. It's important to record each person that they come in, not just so that we can have an accurate count of attendance, but so that we can also record which individual persons were there. If the names are not on the list or you're not finding them quickly, simply write down the names of the persons that were there. Please don't just write down Mary plus 2. Who are the other 2 that were with whoever it is that you're coming in? We will have some additional masks available in case someone forgets their mask at the car or at home. And we need to have you as ushers ensure that those masks are worn properly, covering the mouth and nose while persons are in the room. And that people will need to sanitize their hands. This hand sanitizers are out and available in the lobby, and so as people come in, you'll be able to point them to that so they can wipe their hands. We want to ask also that you will then direct people to their seats, guide them to the seats, and judge how many people are there, because we have to maintain 6-foot separation, physical separation, between families that do not live together in the same household. So if you have an individual, a single person, don't put them in a long pew where we can get more people. Bring them up front, put them in a shorter pew, things like that. It's going to be difficult to arrange that, but we're going to need you to pay attention to make sure that everybody does that. And we'll try and come up with some ways to help you to do that. I imagine maybe a pool noodle or something cut to a 6-foot length that's going to help people see how far that is. Everyone coming into worship is going to be asked to come in through the main doors. I know that some people have come in through side doors in the past. We simply, first of all, can't get to all the doors and have people there with the additional duties of the ushers and greeters. And secondly, those are additional areas then that would need to be cleaned and sanitized between services, and I don't know that we're going to have that much time. We're going to be able to accommodate up to 25% of our capacity here. Right now that means about 82 people. But it's going to fluctuate based on how many people or how much space we have in between. The more individual people we have, the fewer people we're going to be able to get into the room, because we obviously can't sit everybody 6 feet apart. It'll be first come, first served though, so if you get somebody in, they may have to, or some larger group comes later, they might have to agree to being split up and help them with that. If we reach the maximum capacity inside the worship space, then we'll set up some chairs out in the narthex. The thing is try and keep family units together and use only the seats that are open. You'll notice that every other row is taped off. Please don't seat people in there, and don't allow other people to drop the tape and go in, because that gives the 6 foot difference in space from front to back. You'll notice in the worship space that all of the hymnals, the Bibles, the attendance pads, the prayer request forms, all of those things have been removed, including the pencils. That is so that we have nothing that is commonly shared. Everything like that would have to be sanitized. Of course, it's very difficult to sanitize a piece of paper. It's going to crumple. So all those things have been removed. We're not going to be distributing bulletins or things like that. Though there are going to be some things available for people in the lobby, we'll encourage them to get those things later after the service and to minimize the touch. There will also not be any passing of the peace or any kind of contact during the worship service. And I know one of the usher duties that has been done in the past is passing the plate to collect offering. We're not going to be passing a plate. There will be instead either drop boxes or offering plates at the rear of the worship space that people can leave their offering in those. At the conclusion of the service, I'm going to ask that you ushers dismiss the congregation one row at a time. So people can leave out of the doors here. We'd prefer that they go out the main doors that they came in, because again, if they go out any other door, that just becomes another surface that we have to clean. But at least we'll know about it, and they are permitted to. We don't want to make them feel uncomfortable if they go out a door that's closer to their car. It's a whole lot easier to wipe down just the inside than to do the whole thing. We cannot permit them to gather indoors. We can't do much about once they step outside. We simply ask that don't let them cluster and block up sidewalks and stuff. But you're going to be busy after the service, and people haven't seen each other in a year. I know that everybody is anxious to get back together, so there's going to be some gathering. And outdoors is less of a concern than indoors. We do, however, still want to encourage 6 foot of separation, no handshakes, no hugging, things like that. After the service has finished, we have a spray bottle of hydrogen peroxide solution that we're going to ask that one or two of you, we have 2 of them, spray all of the pews that people were sitting in and any of the chairs. You'll go through that and practice it in a little bit, because if you get too much, it'll be too wet and it won't dry in enough time for the next service. If you don't get enough on, it was not really doing what it's supposed to do. Also, we're going to use the wipes, sanitizing wipes, to wipe down the woodwork and any of the hard surfaces. It is really important, do not spray an aerosol around any of the microphones or any of the electronics, the cameras, the soundboard, the piano, the organ, anything that's going to be harmed by an aerosol spray. Just wipe the hard surfaces on. Do not wipe the mouthpieces for the microphones. That is a risk that we're mitigating in a different way. Another one of those areas is that sometimes people need to use the restroom during worship or right after worship, and that's fine. we're going to ask and provide the materials that they would clean up themselves. But after the service and after everybody has gone out, we need you to go in, make sure that the toilet and the restroom have been cleaned, wipe down the toilet seats, the faucets, handles, and all the things in the restrooms so that they are ready for use. And of course that includes pick up any trash that's on the floor and make sure that's disposed of. And then it should go without saying, be sure to wash your hands and be wearing gloves while you're doing all that cleanup, then properly dispose of those gloves so that you are clean. We are going to start with 2 indoor worship services, the 7:30 and the 10:30 worship times. They're going to be very similar in format, but those will be the times indoors. We're not doing the 9 o'clock worship indoors to provide enough time for the hydrogen peroxide to dry out before the next service. We will, however, be doing the worship service drive-in at 9:15 in the parking lot next to the activity center. So we want to make sure that that's ready, and you're going to be focused in here with doing the cleanup. During worship, indoors, we will not have any congregational singing, nor will there be any congregational responses at this time. Hopefully in the not too distant future, but sometime down the road, that will be able to ease up and we'll be able to do responses even with masks on. But right now our guidance is that we're not to do that. There will not be any nursery or Sunday school or children's Sunday school. The playground will not be open, so we may have children here in the worship space. That shouldn't be a big problem. There will be no adult Sunday school classes offered. Right now we're limited to 25% capacity. So that's, like I said, about 82 people if we use all of our spaces. Now, hopefully, no one is going to get sick during the worship services. And the next few slides deal particularly if somebody has a COVID symptom or if someone becomes ill. There are some other issues that we're not going to talk about right now. Maybe we'll touch on in a little bit. If a person is just beginning to not feel well and they're able to get up and move, help them out from the worship space. Be with them while they either escort them to their car so they can drive home or call someone to come and pick them up so that they can go on home. If they need to use the restroom, they're feeling like they're going to vomit, or if they are having diarrhea, they may not feel up to cleaning up in there. We're going to need to assist them with that. If somebody does become ill and they have to use the restroom, when they're done, we want to cordon that off until we have enough time to be able to go in and do a good job of cleaning it up. If somebody needs more help than that, they need emergency medical services to come, an usher should call 911. Another usher should go outside and wait for the ambulance and fire truck to show up and then direct them to what door where the person is going to be at. The usher who calls should stay with that person, so we're talking about 2 ushers working with that. The worship service will continue, and so other ushers may be needed in there. If we need to dismiss the congregation, then ushers will need your help to be able to get them out in an orderly fashion and provide as much privacy for the individual as possible. If the person is able to get up and move, but they're still not feeling well, or they need further medical assistance and we're waiting for the ambulance, take them over to classroom 1 in the fellowship hall and wait for them there. That way when the ambulance comes, they're not coming in and making a bunch of noise in the lobby, but they're able to get attention over in the classroom. And then of course, after the person is gone, they've been taken to the hospital or wherever they need to go, we'll need to sanitize classroom 1. It's my hope that we'll be able to continue worship But on the event that somebody has some kind of a medical incident, for example, a cardiac event, or they experience a stroke, or just simply pass out, and we're not able to get them out, and we're close to the end of the worship service anyway, we may just dismiss the worship service, and we'll make that decision based on what I'm able to see and what you report up, and then we'll just escort everybody out. If somebody doesn't make it to the restroom before they vomit or have some kind of a biological response here in the worship space, then we need to make sure that we cordon that space off until we can get in and clean it. Probably is not going to be available the rest of the day until we can get to that. If it's during the second service, then we'll get to it right after the service. If a person comes up to the door wanting to come into worship and they are already experiencing some of the COVID symptoms, or they have a temperature and they're not aware of it, a temperature of 100.1 or higher, we need to tell them not to come in and just ask that they go back home. We should do that politely but firmly. We cannot run the risk of having somebody that is sick in here. They need to stay at home in the kind of isolation that we've had over the last year. They need to be at home in isolation for 14 days. And if we have somebody who is very insistent about coming in and that they are not willing to comply, but they want to come in, if I am available, then I would say, please ask me to come over and talk to them. The last thing that I really want to do would be to cancel the worship service, but if they are not willing to comply with our protocols, then that's what we would be tasked with doing. Your job then as the usher is not so much what you're used to with the traditional things of the service of passing the plate and what have you. You still are greeting people. It's important to be happy, but it is also important to help keep the calm here. Encourage all of the things that we've been doing as a society for the last year of keeping the physical separation, keeping the masks on, using the hand sanitizer, do all the things that we need to do with the protocol. Ensure that people do not have the symptoms, particularly not having a fever. You still are going to be responsible for taking attendance and getting a head count. I would suggest that perhaps after everybody's in and seated, taking a head count, because it's going to be difficult to make sure you get everybody counted as they come through the door. It's just a way of double checking. And that make sure that people, once they're seated, stay where we put them, and that they don't decide to go sidle up close to somebody else. And that's another one of those that's going to be difficult to do, because I know that there are some adult children that don't live in the same homes as their parents, but they're going to probably go over and be with their parents. And I don't want to make a big scene of that, even though that's discouraged and not completely compliant with our protocols. We want to discourage that as much as we can. We want to also direct foot traffic as much as we can, and then take care of the sanitization of all of the soft and hard surfaces, being attentive not to harm any of the musical instruments or the electronics in the process. In the session, after you have viewed this, your leader will show you how to sanitize the pews and all of the other surfaces. Thank you again for volunteering to be an usher in this time. We appreciate your help and your service to God in this church. Thank you.